At a concert in Austin, my girlfriend climbed onto her male best friend's shoulders and shouted that he was better than me. The crowd cheered. So I give them this. If you were me at 34, would you have stayed or left? I'm Derek 34. The night was supposed to be perfect. Summer in Austin always carries a restless energy. The air is thick, the heat lingers long after sunset, and the city hums with music pouring from bars and festivals. I wanted Sophie and me to have a memory we could hold on to, something bright to cut through the arguments that had been simmering between us. That's why I went online weeks earlier and bought 2 VIP tickets to the concert. $750. That kind of spending doesn't come easy for me. I run a CrossFit gym in South Austin, and while it pays the bills and gives me pride, I don't throw money around. But I thought she was worth it. For the first hour inside the stadium, I almost convinced myself I had made the right choice. The music vibrated through the floor. Sophie's hand was in mine, and she laughed like she was weightless. She twirled, tugged at me, pressed close. I watched her hair catch the light, her eyes shining, and for a moment I remembered the woman I had fallen for 2 years earlier. But even in that moment, a knot sat heavy in my stomach, because I knew Travis would never be far from her world. Travis, the so-called best friend, 33 years old, never without a smirk, always around when he shouldn't be. From the first time I met him, I sensed the line between friend and something more was blurred. Sophie swore it was innocent. She swore he was like a brother, but brothers don't send late night texts. Brothers don't show up uninvited to birthdays. Brothers don't hover so close that a boyfriend has to ask his girlfriend for boundaries. 6 months ago, I had that talk with Sophie. I told her plainly, I need you to create distance. If you respect me, you'll do it. She cried, promised she would. For a while, I believed her. Which is why my chest tightened when I spotted Travis in the crowd that night. He was already inside, just a few feet away, beer in hand, grinning like he owned the place. I turned to Sophie, my voice low. Did you invite him? Her expression snapped sharp. Don't start. That was all she said, and the words were enough to silence me. I should have pushed, but I didn't. Not then. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that Sophie loves drama the way plants love sunlight. She feeds on it, grows in it. And I wasn't going to give her that stage. The band took the stage, lights exploding across the stadium. Thousands of people screamed, arms lifted. Sophie bounced on her feet, eyes wide. For a moment, I thought maybe we could still have this night. Maybe I could swallow my unease and let her have fun. Then she tugged my arm, lift me up. My back twinged just at the thought. Years of heavy lifting at the gym had left me with a stubborn injury. I shook my head. I can't. You know that. Her smile vanished. It was as if I had failed some unspoken test. And then she turned quick as a snap and tapped Travis. You do it. Before I could react, Travis crouched. Sophie climbed, and suddenly she was above the crowd, perched high on his shoulders. Her arms stretched to the sky as if she were the star of the show. And then she shouted, he's taller, way better than my boyfriend. The words hit harder than the bass pounding through the speakers. Around us, strangers laughed and clapped. A group of college kids nearby whooped and repeated her words like it was the funniest joke they had heard all night. Faces turned toward me, some with amusement, some with pity. I felt heat rise through my chest, a burning so fierce it was almost dizzying. My hands shook, my jaw locked. I could have screamed. I could have shoved through the crowd, dragged her down, demanded an explanation. But all of that would have made me part of her theater. Instead, something inside me went cold. I looked up at her perched on another man's shoulders, shouting her disrespect to thousands of strangers, and I knew. This was who she was. This was who she had chosen to be. And I wasn't going to be part of it anymore. I turned without a word. The crowd pressed around me, bodies sticky with sweat, plastic cups sloshing beer onto the floor. I pushed past them, my ears ringing with the roar of the music and the echo of her voice. I moved faster, weaving through the maze of strangers, my breath steadying with every step. I passed the merchandise stands, the neon wristbands flashing in the dark. I passed the food stalls where the smell of fried onions mixed with spilled soda. Every step away from that stage felt like peeling off a weight I had carried too long. When I reached the exit gates, I didn't hesitate. The stadium noise dulled behind me, replaced by the hum of the city. The night air outside was still hot, but it felt cleaner, freer. I walked across the lot toward my truck, the gravel crunching under my shoes. The music was still faint in the distance, but it no longer touched me. By the time Sophie looked down and realized I was gone, I was already halfway to the parking lot. And I didn't look back. That night should have been a celebration, but instead it became a line I could never uncross. She mocked me in public, and with my silence, I told her it was over. Austin, 2 years before the concert. I was 32 when Sophie first walked into my gym. She came in on a Monday morning, the kind of day when the air is still heavy from the weekend heat and most people drag their feet. She was different, bright, full of energy, asking questions before she even signed the waiver. She laughed at the smallest things, made eye contact like she'd known me for years. I noticed her instantly. I had spent years building that CrossFit studio from the ground up, long hours, 7 days a week, coaching early classes, handling billing late at night. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. By 32, I was proud of what I had built, even if my personal life felt like an afterthought. Sophie changed that. She walked in, and suddenly the place I saw as my second home became the setting for something I hadn't let myself imagine in a while: companionship. We started with small conversations after class. She asked about my routines, joked that I was too disciplined for my own good. I told her discipline was the only reason the gym existed. She teased, I smiled, and before long we were texting between her visits. By the end of that summer, we were dating. The first year felt easy. Sophie was spontaneous, lively, the kind of woman who pulled me out of my patterns. She would show up at the gym with iced coffee just as I was finishing the last session of the day. She'd drag me to food trucks on the east side, to live music bars on 6th Street, to trails at Barton Creek where she'd insist on taking selfies while I just wanted to keep running. I didn't mind. Her energy filled spaces that had felt quiet for too long. But with Sophie came Travis. She introduced him early. "This is my best friend," she said, smiling, her hand still linked with mine. Travis shook my hand, and even then I caught the look in his eye, the too long glance at Sophie. The casual comment meant to test me. "Take care of her," he said, smirking. "She's high maintenance." Sophie laughed. I forced a polite grin. At first I told myself I was imagining things. Best friends exist, right? Men and women can have platonic friendships. But over time, it wasn't just a friendship. It was the late night texts I'd catch on her screen, the way her mood changed after seeing him, the casual touches she brushed off as nothing. By the second year, my patience thinned. One night in our apartment, I finally said it. "I need you to create distance with Travis." She blinked at me, shocked, then defensive. "He's like a brother. You're being paranoid." I shook my head. "Brothers don't send midnight texts. Brothers don't call you when we're having dinner. I'm not asking for much, just respect." Her voice cracked and tears filled her eyes. She cried into my chest, promising she'd do better. "I'll set boundaries," she whispered. "I'll make sure you don't feel second place." I wanted to believe her. I did believe her for a while. For months after that conversation, things seemed calmer. Travis's name appeared less on her phone. He stopped showing up at events. Sophie seemed more focused on us. She even started helping out at the gym occasionally, cheering me on when I was buried in paperwork. I thought we had turned a corner. But deep down, part of me stayed alert. I noticed the way she still lit up when his name slipped into conversation. I noticed how quickly she changed the subject when I asked simple questions. It was subtle, but I could feel it. Travis hadn't left the picture. He was waiting in the background, and Sophie kept the door open just enough for him to walk through whenever she pleased. Looking back, those months were the calm before the storm. Our arguments in that second year always circled the same point: respect. I wasn't jealous by nature. Running a business teaches you to be practical, to weigh facts. And the fact was, Sophie had patterns of disrespect. Not just with Travis, but with the way she flirted for attention at bars, the way she made jokes at my expense in front of friends. They were little cuts, small enough to laugh off at the time, but over months, they became deep wounds. She thrived in the spotlight. I thrived in quiet discipline. We were mismatched in a way I didn't want to admit. Still, I tried. I doubled down on showing commitment. I took her out more. I spent on things I normally wouldn't, like the concert tickets. I told myself those gestures would remind her where we stood, that I was here steady, building a life, not just chasing attention. Sophie smiled, kissed me, assured me things were good. "I'm happy," she said. But the unease never fully left. And then came the night of the concert, the night I saw that every promise she made had been empty. When I replay those 2 years in my head, I see the warnings I ignored, the promises she broke, and the storm building toward that one night in Austin. A night that would end not with music, but with silence as I walked away. The months leading up to the concert felt for a time like the relationship I'd always hoped for. It started with small changes, fewer late-night messages flashing across Sophie's phone. No more excuses about Travis dropping by unannounced. For the first time in over a year, I could sit across from her at dinner and not feel like a third person was sitting between us. I told myself my words from that night in our apartment had sunk in. I told myself she had listened. At the gym, life was steady. Memberships were growing, classes were full, and I spent most mornings shouting encouragement to clients while sweat poured off the rig bars. Sophie stopped by once or twice, dropping off lunch, leaning against the front desk with that playful smile. The staff liked her. Clients noticed her energy. For a while, things looked normal. But normal with Sophie was always a fragile thing. One night, sitting together on our apartment balcony, I brought up the concert. "I got us something," I said, sliding my laptop around so she could see the email confirmation. 2 VIP tickets, $750. Her eyes widened. VIP, Derek, that's insane. I shrugged. I wanted it to be special. Just us, no distractions. She leaned over, kissed me, whispered, "You're the best." And for that moment, I believed her. It wasn't easy for me to spend that kind of money. Every dollar usually went back into the gym equipment, rent, staff, payroll. But I wanted to invest in us. I wanted a night where she could feel adored without needing an audience, and I could feel like I was enough. The weeks ticked down toward the concert. Sophie seemed lighter, almost giddy. She sent me playlists of the band, texted me about what outfit she might wear, laughed when I teased her about being more excited than me. I let myself get swept up in it. Maybe this was our reset. Looking back, there were cracks I ignored. A text I glimpsed on her phone when she left it on the counter. Travis's name at the top. She locked the screen too quickly for me to read more than a few words. "Can't wait." Something about that phrase clawed at me, but I didn't press. When I asked about him casually, she brushed it off. "We hardly talk anymore. You know that." I wanted to believe her. Believing felt easier than another argument. 2 nights before the concert, we had dinner at a small Tex-Mex spot near South Congress. She laughed all through the meal, telling stories from work, brushing my hand with hers across the table. She looked like the woman I fell in love with, the woman who had walked into my gym 2 years ago. "I'm really excited," she said between sips of margarita. "It feels like forever since we've done something just the two of us." I smiled. That was the point. She reached across, squeezed my hand. "I appreciate you, Derek." Those words sank deep. They made me think maybe all the boundaries I had fought for were finally respected. The morning of the concert, I was up early at the gym. My last class ended at 10. The members filed out, music still pumping through the speakers. I stood in the empty room, chalk dust hanging in the air, and thought about the night ahead. I imagined Sophie and me shoulder to shoulder in the crowd, her hand in mine, laughing without a care. I locked up the gym and drove home, humming the band's songs under my breath. Sophie was already dressed when I walked in. Hair done, makeup, flawless outfit chosen to catch eyes. She spun in the living room. "Well, what do you think?" I smiled. "You look incredible." She kissed me quick, grabbed her purse. "Let's go make a night to remember." And I believed we would. What I didn't know, what I refused to see, was that the night I thought would bind us closer was the night she had already scripted for my humiliation. Because even as I held those tickets in my hand, proud of the effort I had made, Travis was still waiting in the wings. And Sophie had kept the door open for him all along. I thought the tickets were proof of love, an anchor to keep us steady. In reality, they were just a stage Sophie needed for the performance that would end us. The night of the concert burned itself into my memory like a scar. The stadium lights glowed against the humid Austin sky as Sophie and I walked in through the VIP gates. The air smelled of fried food, spilled beer, and excitement. Thousands of people pressed forward, their laughter and shouts mixing into a single roar. I gripped the tickets tighter than I needed to, as if they were proof of something, proof that I had tried, proof that she mattered. Sophie was buzzing. She bounced on her heels, tugging at my arm, pointing at the merch booth. "We should get a shirt later," she said, eyes wide. "This is amazing." For a while, I let myself believe it would be the night I had planned. She leaned against me smiling, and I thought, maybe this was the reset we needed. Then I saw him, Travis, standing just a few feet away, already inside, beer cup in hand, wearing that smug look I knew too well. My chest tightened. I turned to Sophie, keeping my voice low. "Did you invite him?" Her smile froze, then sharpened. "Don't start," she hissed, as if I was the one picking a fight. I clenched my jaw. The music was building, lights flashing. I swallowed my words, forced myself to focus on the stage. The headliner came on. The crowd erupted, thousands of voices, screaming, arms raised. Sophie swayed with the rhythm, her body brushing mine, her laughter rising above the noise. For a moment, I almost let it go. Then she tugged my sleeve, lifted me up. The request hit like a stone. She knew about my back. Years of lifting at the gym had left me with a permanent injury. I shook my head, leaned close so she could hear me. "I can't. You know that." Her face changed in an instant. The sparkle in her eyes hardened into something else. A challenge. She turned without hesitation, tapped Travis on the shoulder. "You do it." And he did. He crouched, Sophie climbed, and suddenly she was high above the crowd, balanced on his shoulders like she belonged there. Her arms shot out, hair flying in the lights. She looked down at me, and for one split second our eyes met. Then she shouted, "He's taller, way better than my boyfriend." The words cut through the music, sharp and cruel. The crowd around us exploded. Cheers, laughter, claps. A group of college kids nearby repeated her words, pointing at me like it was a joke they all shared. Strangers stared, some smirking, some pitying. My chest burned. My hands shook. Every instinct screamed at me to react, to shout back, to pull her down, to make her face the disrespect she had just thrown in front of thousands. But instead, something inside me went cold. I stared at her, my girlfriend of 2 years, perched on another man's shoulders, mocking me for entertainment. In that moment, I saw the truth clearer than ever. This wasn't a slip. It wasn't an accident. It was who she was. And I couldn't be part of it anymore. Without a word, I turned. The music thundered behind me, the crowd pressed tight, but I pushed through. Elbows brushed mine, beer splashed on my shoes, voices shouted lyrics I couldn't hear. I kept moving, past the merch booths with overpriced shirts, past the food stalls where onions sizzled on the grill, past the couples kissing in the aisles. Each step felt lighter. By the time I reached the exit gate, the roar of the stadium dulled. The humid Austin night wrapped around me. Out here, the air was still hot, but it was mine. I crossed the lot toward my truck, gravel crunching beneath my shoes. Behind me, the music pounded Sophie's voice, long gone. I didn't look back. When Sophie finally glanced down and realized I wasn't there, I was already halfway across the parking lot, walking into a silence that felt more powerful than anything she could ever shout. The morning after the concert, I woke up to a silence that felt unnatural. Not the calm kind of silence you earn after a long day, but the heavy, suffocating kind. The kind that presses down on you, reminding you of everything that's been lost. My apartment was the same as always, yet it looked different. The couch, the photos, even the coffee table felt like they belonged to someone else's life. I glanced toward the nightstand. My phone screen lit up every few seconds, buzzing across the wood. Dozens of notifications stacked one after another. When I finally turned it over, Sophie's name filled the screen. "Where are you, Derek? It was a joke. You're taking it wrong. Please come back. We need to talk. Don't throw us away over one night. You're being dramatic. I love you. Call me." Her tone shifted, with every message pleading, blaming sweet, then bitter. I let the phone rest in my hand. The weight of it felt heavier than it should. I thought back to the night before her shouting those words from Travis's shoulders, the crowd cheering as if my pain were entertainment. I set the phone down, walked to the kitchen, started the coffee maker. The smell filled the air, bitter and grounding. I leaned against the counter, staring at the pot as it slowly filled each drip like a reminder that life moves on whether you're ready or not. The phone buzzed again, then again. I refused to pick it up. Instead, I thought about the last 2 years, the promises Sophie had made, the nights she swore Travis was just a friend, the way she'd cried in my arms promising to set boundaries. I thought about how I had believed her, how much faith I had invested, and I thought about the moment she looked down at me, balanced on another man's shoulders, laughing as she announced to strangers that he was better. My chest tightened. I poured a cup of coffee, carried it to the table, and finally opened the phone. Her messages hadn't stopped. Now they were frantic. "Answer me. If you walk away, you'll regret it. Travis means nothing, you know that. It was just for fun, the crowd loved it." I scrolled, feeling anger rise in me, not the hot kind that explodes, but the cold, steady kind that decides. Love isn't humiliation. Love isn't betrayal broadcast to thousands. I deleted that entire thread. Then I opened my contacts, found her name, and pressed block. The phone went still. No more buzzing. The silence that followed was different, lighter, cleaner, like air after a thunderstorm when the clouds finally move on. The rest of the morning, I moved through my apartment in slow steps. Every corner held her presence. Her sweater draped across the couch, a half-empty bottle of shampoo in the shower, her sneakers lined by the door. I gathered them all one by one and set them in a box. My hands moved steadily, but inside I felt the weight of every memory. Each item wasn't just fabric or plastic, it was a broken promise. By noon, the box was full. I left it by the entrance. The apartment looked bare, but it felt like mine again. That afternoon, I drove to the gym. The familiar clang of weights and the sharp scent of chalk welcomed me. My staff greeted me with smiles, their voices cheerful, unaware of what had happened the night before. Clients laughed between sets. Music blasted from the speakers. For a few hours, I was just Coach Derek again. I counted reps, corrected form, cheered people through to their last burpees. The rhythm steadied me. Discipline, respect, consistency. They were the values I built my life on, the values Sophie had never understood. She chased drama. I built stability. For the first time in a long time, I realized I didn't need her chaos to feel alive. Driving home, the sun dipped low over Austin, painting the sky orange and pink. Traffic crawled, but I didn't mind. My phone sat on the passenger seat, silent blocked. That silence no longer felt suffocating. It felt like freedom. That day, I didn't yell, I didn't plead, I didn't beg. I simply cut the cord. And in doing so, I chose myself over the storm she thrived in. 2 weeks passed after the concert, and my life found a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. The gym was busier than ever. Early morning started with the clang of barbells, the thud of medicine balls, the sharp scent of chalk hanging in the air. Members showed up with sleepy eyes and left drenched in sweat, smiling. My staff handled check-ins, music, and equipment with ease, giving me room to coach without distraction. For the first time in months, I wasn't splitting my attention. No glances at my phone, no waiting for Sophie's text, no trying to guess whether she was with Travis. My energy belonged entirely to the place I had built. And people noticed. Man, you look 10 years younger, one client said after class, grinning as he wiped sweat from his face. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. I smiled, handed him a towel. Just getting back to basics. It was true. The stress, the constant second guessing it had aged me. Now without it, I felt lighter. I threw myself into the business. We upgraded equipment I had been putting off for months. I trained 2 new staff members, watched them grow confident leading warm-ups. I stayed late cleaning, reorganizing, planning. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The gym had always been my sanctuary. It had saved me once before after college when I was lost, unsure of who I wanted to be. Now, it was saving me again. Sophie used to roll her eyes at how much time I spent here. It's like you're married to this place, she'd say, half joking, half resentful. Maybe she was right, but unlike her, the gym never betrayed me. Every so often, I caught whispers about her. One afternoon, as I was wiping down barbells after a class, 2 clients chatted near the desk. Did you see Sophie the other night? She was at that new bar on Rainy Street. Didn't look too good. The others shrugged. Travis was there too. They didn't seem happy. They didn't notice me listening, and I didn't say a word. I just kept cleaning my hands steady. Inside, though, something shifted. Not satisfaction exactly, but confirmation. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to prove anything. Life was showing Sophie the consequences without my help. At night, the apartment was quiet. The box of her belongings still sat near the door untouched. I thought about dropping it off, but decided against it. She hadn't asked, and I had no intention of opening that door again. Sometimes I wondered if she was still trying to reach me. Different numbers, emails maybe, but with her blocked, I never saw them. And the absence of her voice, her constant noise, it was like fresh air. One evening, after closing the gym, I sat alone in the office. The only light came from the computer screen spreadsheets glowing. I leaned back, stretched, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I wasn't ecstatic, I wasn't celebrating, I was simply calm. And for a man like me, calm is worth more than fireworks. A week later, I was downtown grabbing coffee when I saw her. Sophie. She was across the street walking with Travis. Her hair was messy, her eyes tired. She laughed at something he said, but it was hollow, strained. Even from a distance, I could see the cracks. I didn't wave. I didn't stop. I just turned coffee in hand and walked the other way. For the first time I realized I didn't care what she thought, didn't care if she noticed me or not. That I understood was freedom. The gym gave me structure, the silence gave me clarity, and Sophie's absence gave me peace. I didn't chase her downfall, it came on its own. And in that realization, I found stability stronger than anything we ever shared. It was a Wednesday night when Sophie showed up again. I had just closed the gym, the last clang of weights fading, the lights dimmed. The city outside hummed with evening traffic, tires hissing on wet asphalt from a quick rain. I was locking the front door when I saw her standing near the curb, arms crossed, eyes searching. Her presence hit me like a ghost from another life. Derek, she called softly, stepping closer. I froze for a second, keys still in my hand. I hadn't seen her up close since the morning after the concert. The weeks had carved themselves into her face, dark circles under her eyes, hair not as polished, and unease in her posture. I sighed, unlocked my truck. What do you want, Sophie? She bit her lip, hesitant, then blurted out, I need to explain. Please, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I nodded. 5 minutes wouldn't change anything, but maybe it would give her closure and me confirmation. We walked to the small bench near the gym entrance. The night air was humid, carrying the faint smell of barbecue from a nearby restaurant. She sat fidgeting with her hands. I messed up, she began. That night, it wasn't what it looked like. I laughed short and sharp. You screamed from his shoulders that he was better than me. Thousands heard it, Sophie. What else could it be? Her face flushed. I was drunk, caught in the moment. You know, concerts, everyone yells stupid things. I didn't mean it. I shook my head slowly. 2 years together, and that's what you gave me. Public humiliation. She reached for my hand. I pulled it back. Her voice cracked. Derek, I miss us. I miss you. Travis, he's not what I thought. He doesn't care the way you did. He doesn't even show up half the time. There it was, the shift from excuses to desperation. She leaned closer, eyes pleading. Can we start over? Please, you're steady, reliable. You're the only one who ever really loved me. For a moment, the old part of me, the one that once believed her tears stirred. But it didn't last. I had replayed that concert night too many times, felt the sting of her words too deeply. I had lived through the mornings of silence that felt like freedom, the long days at the gym where my energy wasn't drained by her chaos. I wasn't the same man who once begged for her respect. I already gave you everything I said quietly. Trust, time, loyalty. You threw it away for attention. You don't get to come back when it falls apart. Her eyes filled with tears. So that's it? After everything, you're just done? I stood pulling my truck keys from my pocket. I was done the moment you climbed onto his shoulders. I walked to the truck, opened the back, and pulled out the box I had been carrying around for weeks, her belongings. Clothes, shoes, that sweater she always left on my couch. I set it down gently on the curb. Here, I said. This is yours. That's all that's left. She stared at the box as if it were a coffin, her face crumpling. Derek, please. I shook my head. Goodbye, Sophie. Then I climbed into the truck, started the engine, and pulled away. In the rearview mirror, I saw her still sitting on the bench box beside her shoulders, hunched. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel cruelty. I felt closure. The next morning at the gym, the sun streaming through the windows, clients arriving with bright energy, I realized something profound. Quiet justice isn't about revenge. It's about refusing to carry someone else's chaos any longer. By returning her things by saying no without raising my voice, I had ended the cycle. She was out of my life for good. I didn't slam doors. I didn't shout. I simply handed her the box, walked away, and left her to the consequences she created. That was justice enough. The weeks after my final conversation with Sophie unfolded like the opening chapters of a new life. Each morning I woke not to buzzing notifications or the weight of unspoken tension, but to stillness. The sun spilled through my blinds, painting the walls gold. I brewed coffee, sat at the table with nothing but my thoughts, and realized how rare it felt to start the day without dread. The silence that once suffocated me now felt like oxygen. At the gym, things only grew brighter. Attendance was up. A local blogger wrote a short feature on Austin's best community gyms, and we made the list. New faces showed up, dragging in friends, eager to be part of something positive. I coached harder than ever, not because I was proving anything, but because I finally had the energy to give all of myself. One afternoon after class, a member clapped me on the shoulder. Man, whatever you're doing, keep at it. You've got this whole place buzzing. I laughed, wiping sweat from my forehead. Guess it's contagious. They didn't know the truth that the buzz came not from adding something new, but from cutting something toxic out. I built new routines outside of work too. I started running on the trail by Lady Bird Lake, again headphones and legs steady beneath the Austin skyline. For months, Sophie used to complain about those runs, saying they took too much of my time. Now, with no one pulling me away, I rediscovered the peace of moving at my own pace. Saturday mornings, I'd grab coffee at a small shop on South Congress, sit outside with my laptop, and work on expansion plans for the gym. Families passed. Dogs barked music, drifted from buskers. Life kept moving, vibrant, unbothered by the wreckage of my past relationship. I felt part of it again. Occasionally, I heard whispers about Sophie and Travis. One client mentioned seeing them arguing at a bar. Another said Sophie looked worn down, quieter than before. I didn't pry. Whatever story they were writing now had nothing to do with me. But I won't lie, there was a certain validation in knowing I didn't need to lift a finger. Choices come with consequences, and Sophie was meeting hers. Sometimes at night, lying on my couch, I let my mind wander back to that concert. The memory no longer carried heat or humiliation. Instead, it felt like a marker, the point where one version of me ended and another began. The Derek who endured, who tolerated disrespect, stopped existing in that stadium. The Derek who walked out into the humid Austin night was someone else, someone who refused to beg for what should have been given freely. Quiet justice doesn't come with applause. It doesn't get headlines. It doesn't even always get noticed, but it has weight. And that weight carries you forward, steady, unbroken. A month later, the gym hosted a small in-house competition. Members cheered each other on music, blasted sweat poured. At the end, we took a group photo, 40 smiling faces, arms around each other, proud of what we had built. As I stood in the middle of that crowd, grinning for the camera, it struck me this was family. Not Sophie, not Travis, not the drama I had been dragged into. These people, this community, this purpose, this was what mattered. One evening after closing, I lingered alone in the gym. The rigs gleamed under the lights plates stacked neatly, the floor still smelling faintly of chalk. I thought of Sophie, not with longing, not even with anger, just with distance. She had been part of my story, but never the center. I had mistaken her noise for substance, her chaos for passion. In truth, she was only ever a detour. The real story had always been here: discipline, growth, consistency. And standing there in the quiet, I knew I was back on the right road. Resolution doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives with a still night, an empty gym, and the realization that you are finally okay. I didn't need Sophie to apologize. I didn't need Travis to fail. I didn't need anyone to recognize what had happened to me, because I recognized it myself, and that was enough. If there's a message in all of this, it's simple. Don't waste your life begging someone to treat you with the respect they should have offered freely. Don't let someone else's chaos drown out your own peace. You have the right to walk away. You have the right to choose silence over spectacle. And sometimes the quiet exit is the loudest statement you'll ever make. At 34, I didn't win by fighting louder or sinking to their level. I won by stepping out steady and silent, leaving Sophie and Travis to the noise they created. And in that silence, I reclaimed my life. Looking back now, I see the whole arc, clearly the man I was, the storm I endured, and the peace I found by stepping away. The concert wasn't just the breaking point, it was the doorway to something better. Walking out that night, I didn't realize I was stepping into a new life, but that's exactly what happened. I learned that betrayal doesn't have to define you. Disrespect doesn't have to chain you. The moment you stop begging for love where there is none, you reclaim the space to build something lasting, whether it's a gym, a community, or simply your own peace of mind. Quiet exits are powerful. They don't need an audience, they don't need applause, they simply leave behind the chaos and open the way forward. And sometimes that's the greatest justice of all. If you've ever faced a moment where silence felt stronger than shouting, I'd like to hear about it. What choice did you make and how did it shape your story? Share your thoughts, I'll be reading. And if this journey resonated with you, consider subscribing. There are more stories like mine, each with lessons about resilience, betrayal, and the power of walking away.